Then Ajahn Brahm said, no, that's how we live. And the prisoners thought this was just nuts. And then he pointed out the difference between you and between the monks is that the monks are happy and you not. The monks are very happy and you're not. Why? Because you don't want to be there and they do want to be there. That's the difference. And no matter what the outer circumstances are, because they want to be there, then the monks are happy. And because the prisoners don't want to be there, even though they're looked after much better than the monks, they are unhappy. So it depends on how you define your happiness and your suffering. What you define as happiness, what you define as suffering. But that's a bit of a by the way. But let's get back to the point. Remembering that everything that we do is in search of happiness and to be free of suffering. So now, when we do things looking for happiness and to be free of suffering, normally we don't think about it. Like, for instance, if you want a cup of coffee, maybe you're sitting there, you're madly writing, madly doing your university work, and then suddenly you get this desire for a cup of coffee. What do? Get up and go and make a cup of coffee, right? You don't think about it, you just get up and say, now I'll have a break and have a cup of coffee. You go and get the cup of coffee. Do you think this cup of coffee will bring me happiness or not? Did you think, this will bring me happiness or this will bring me suffering?
You think it will at the time.
You have this idea that will bring you some sort of relief, right, from the suffering. But you don't think really, this will bring me happiness, or will this bring me happiness? Will this really bring me happiness? You don't think like that, right? Normally when we go for happiness or to relieve suffering, we just immediately pick up the thing that we think is going to relieve us or bring us happiness. We don't think about whether it really will or not, whether it truly, really will or not. There's a problem with that. The problem is that it doesn't really bring us happiness. Not really. It brings us happiness for a short period of time. But what happens after 2 hours and you're working away steadily? What happens?
Another cup of coffee.
Exactly. You go out for another cup of coffee. Now it's time for another cup of coffee. So you see, if you keep that, now if you stop and you look at the cups of coffee, how many cups of coffee have you had since you started drinking coffee up to now? How many? You could probably could have kept all those coffee growers in their mansions by the amount of coffee that you've bought. Yeah? Has the coffee actually brought you happiness or not? In the long term, it hasn't brought any happiness. All it's brought is more desire for more coffee, right? So that's the problem with the happiness and the suffering. The problem is not the happiness and the suffering. The problem lies how we go about satisfying that suffering, satisfying the happiness and being free of the suffering. There's our problem. So now, if we look, sorry, I know I'm supposed to be talking about relationships, but I'm slowly leading there. I promise you we'll get to relationships in due course of time. If we look closely at, and you probably all know this stuff, but anyway, I'm going to talk about it anyway. If we look closely at the problem, at why we don't get happiness out of the cup of coffee or whatever we do, why it's always bringing us this continual desire, never bringing us any long-term happiness. If we look at behind that, what's behind that? What's behind that desire that never gets satisfied? If we look behind that, then we see I, me. We see I, right? I want the cup of coffee. I. What is that I? What is that thing that wants a cup of coffee? Do you see what I'm doing now? I'm looking back I'm looking back at when we want happiness and we don't want suffering. What is causing this? What is causing this happiness, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering? And how do we really satisfy it? Now when we go back, we see that it's the I that wants happiness and the I that doesn't want suffering. What is that I? What does that mean? Who are you? Tell me who you are. I asked the difficult question, don't I? Okay, who are you? Who is this I?
A person made of habits.
Sorry?
A person made of habits.
Is that what you really, truly believe? Okay, if I say you did something that you didn't do, if I criticized you, if I said you did this, you stole some money from me, you stole my money, what do you do?
I didn't do it.
Yeah, you didn't do it, of course. I say you stole my money, you didn't do it.
Then I would say, oh, no, I didn't do it.
So I didn't do it. Don't talk to me like that. I didn't do it. That I arises. That I that arises. Is that a creature that's just made up of habits? Okay, think about it. Now put yourself in that situation. Put yourself in a situation where somebody has criticized you, and remember this. Remember a situation where somebody criticized you or somebody praised you really well. They said you're a really great person. And just think of the I that arises. What does that I feel like? Does it feel like just a collection of habits? It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like there's a real strong I there. There's a real sort of firm, solid rock. I, independent, inherently existing. I, me. Don't talk to me like that. Don't you think so? Is that your experience? Right. So that I, that is the I that wants happiness and doesn't want suffering. That is the I that says, I deserve, I want the coffee. I don't want you to talk to me like that. Okay, now just go back to that I. Go back to thinking about that I. How's it made up? What's it made of? How does it exist? Sorry?
Experiences.
No. Just don't think about it. Just look at the I, and then think. How does that exist?
Will, maybe?
Sorry?
Will?
Will. Yeah, it's got will in it. It feels, yeah, it's willful.
Identity?
Yeah, we identify with it. We identify strongly with it. But you see, when you actually look at that I, when you look quite closely at that I to find out how it exists, it's very difficult to actually see how it exists. It's very difficult to say, oh, it's like this and it's like that. You know, like you say a house, or the house is made out of bricks and you know, there's a tin roof and there's a door here and then so and so forth. It's very difficult to actually say, how does that I exist? It feels very strong. It appears very strong. But how does it exist? Well, that's another question. Have I lost you? But that's the I. That's the I that's lurking behind everything. That's the I that's driving us all the time to do things to make ourselves happy and not to be free of suffering. That I. And when you meditate on the lack of existence of self, that is the I. That is the I that you have to finally find is not there, because that I doesn't exist.